I'm sure every single day you're inundated with articles saying that the real estate market is crashing or that there's no middle class anymore. Or maybe the opposite, that everybody who owns a home is a millionaire. And if you haven't bought a home already, you got to buy one now. Whatever it might be, it's all just noise. So I wanted to take a few minutes to break down exactly what's happening in the real estate market as we end 2023 and go into 2024 so that you can make the best decision for you and your family when it comes to a potential move. $1 million question is, how is the market? Well, it's a complicated question. And to understand where it is today, you kind of have to understand where it's been for the last 4 years. In 2020, we saw 11.1% appreciation. In 2021, we saw 15.2% appreciation. And then in 2022, we saw 19.8% appreciation. What does that mean? Houses went up in value too fast, and it wasn't sustainable. And it was causing inflation, and it was causing a whole ton of chaos, and it was causing the largest sector of home buyers, millennials, and Gen Zs as well. It was causing young people to not be able to afford housing. And so the government wanted to step in a big way and stop the train that had fallen off the tracks. And the result was in 2023, they went a little bit too far. And as we look at every number for 2023, you'll see that they stepped in and stopped it, and it worked. And then they stopped it too much, and now they're letting off the gas a little bit of what they did. So how did the government exactly stop this massive growth? I'm sure you know the answer. It's interest rates. For years, basically since COVID, money was extremely cheap. You could get an interest rate that started with a 3 almost every single time. As long as you could qualify to buy a home, your interest rate was 3, 3.5, maybe 4 if you had lower credit. And that led to an environment in which, across the board, buying a house, your monthly payment was going to be lower than if you were renting a house. And that caused such an insane amount of demand that we saw those years of 11% and 15% and 19% appreciation. On a long-term healthy scale, real estate should appreciate about 4% per year. 4% per year is a healthy number, and it adjusts for inflation, and it lets the average American basically build a little bit of wealth over time, but not make it so that the entry point is way too high that nobody else can buy a home anymore. And so these numbers were unsustainable. So I want to go back and show you a graph of what interest rates have looked like to tie into what the real estate market graph shows is interest rates over the last 5 years. As you see that they were on a decline in 2019, and then after COVID started in 2020, the government wanted to incentivize people who were still buying houses, so it was as low as it's ever been. This is coming from Freddie Mac, by the way. So as you'll see, most of 2020 and 2021, interest rates were around 3%. The blue line is the 30-year interest rate-ish. It tends to be a little bit higher than what this graph shows by about 0.25% or 0.5%, but it's close. This is good for historical purposes. Anyways, this is showing what happened. Interest rates were low, interest rates were low. We had this massive appreciation, and it wasn't sustainable, so interest rates were raised. Why do I say that interest rates went up too much? Well, because 2023 saw less appreciation than what is average when the government isn't intervening or not intervening as much. 4% per year is the number that pretty much every expert uses for how much real estate should appreciate every single year. And this year we saw an increase in the median sales price of just 1.16%. So not enough for the average American to have extra wealth being built as they own real estate. The other side of this is that days on market also went up because houses took a little bit longer to sell. When somebody has a monthly payment of a 7.5 or 8% interest rate, they're going to be a lot more particular on the house that they're buying compared to when it's at 3% or 3.5%. And so for the average person selling their home, it took longer and was more stressful. For the average person buying a home, it took longer and was more stressful. They had to be more particular about what they were getting. They had to structure the deal in a way that helped them be able to afford it because monthly payments were higher. And so oftentimes we were negotiating to get money back to buy down an interest rate, or we were negotiating to get everything fixed up so that they could put down more money and by extension not have to do any repairs after closing, which is pretty normal to have to repair a house after closing. And so for most people, most of my clients included, 2023 was a stressful year to transact real estate. It was high tension, high stress, usually people moving because they had to move, not because they really, really wanted to move. And that was pretty much the consensus as I talked to other top producing agents in my office. Seems like 2023 was stressful for most people in the real estate world. And for that to happen and have 1.16% appreciation, it's not so great. And so what we're seeing as we're ending 2023, and now as I'm filming this in the first week of January of 2024, is things are actually starting to get a lot better. And I want to show you the chart of what interest rates are doing right now. Okay, so I'm back on the Freddie Mac website and I'm on the 1-year view rather than the 5-year view. And as you can see, as they said they would, they were increasing interest rates slowly over time. And then we hit a point sometime in late October, early November, where they said, you know what? We did it. Enough is enough. We need the real estate market to appreciate again. We now have this artificially high. It's time to start lowering it. And so steadily, pretty much every week now, interest rates are coming down. And we don't know if they're going to continue to come down, but most experts think that they're going to level off here or continue to trend slightly downwards. Now that we've seen those charts on the interest rate, I think the charts of what's gone on in the real estate market will actually make more sense. In the top left, you can see that the number of active listings, which are listings that have come onto the market and have not gone under contract and not sold yet, has gone up slowly as interest rates had gone up. And then immediately when interest rates started to go down, they started to come down too, because more houses were going under contract. Here's the thing. The number of new listings is also way down from last year. Why is that? Why would interest rates going up affect the number of listings? Well, the thing is, most people who are selling their house are then buying another house. And so if somebody is at a 3 or 3.5 or 4% interest rate, and to be able to buy the next house, they'd have to go get an 8% interest rate, they might just feel stuck in their house. They will feel less likely to move. And so the reason that the market didn't crash, even though there were a million articles saying that it would when interest rates went up, is because yes, demand came down. Less people were willing to, and way less people were able to buy a house at an 8% interest rate. Here's the thing. When buyer demand went down, listing supply also went way down. There were a lot of people who owned their house and are at 3, 4, 5% interest rate who were not going to buy at 7 or 8. And so they just never listed their house. It never became part of the supply. So all of that provide context for these numbers. What I'm looking at here are the year-to-date changes. I'm pulling up the December statistics, so it's showing you everything from January to December. And what you'll see in 2023, the median sales price went up 1.16%, and the median days on market over doubled from 12 days on market to 25 days on market. So I think all of that provides context for what has happened so far. What was 2023 like? What were the few years before that like? Basically, to way oversimplify it, interest rates went up, buyer demand went down. When buyer demand went down, listing supply went down because people who would list their house to buy another just did not list their house. The number of sales that we had in 2020 was 15.4K. In 2021 was 17.3K. And in 2022 was 14.9K. So each year between 15 and 17,500 houses, townhomes, condos sold in Brevard County on the Space Coast. Last year, it was down to 13.7 thousand. So way less than what was usual. And those houses sold for about the same amount that they were selling for the year before. That leads to the question, what happens next? For the vast majority of buyers, somewhere around 85 to 90%, they buy with a mortgage. And so they shop for a house based on their monthly payment, not necessarily on the purchase price of the house. And so as people are shopping and interest rates come down, we're going to see demand increase. And so we're likely going to see appreciation again this year, where as demand increases, prices will go up slowly to adjust for that. What does that mean for you if you're looking to buy a house? I'd go ahead and start talking to a lender specifically now, even if you're going to be moving 6 months from now, because it's going to prepare you for what is your monthly budget? What does a house look like that is that monthly budget? Is that a house that I'd like to move into, or should I start arranging for other plans? Do I need to continue renting? Do I need to adjust my budget? Do I need to anything? I think it's important to have the conversation now to be better prepared now. As a realtor, I'm happy to have the conversation too. I just think it's important to talk to a lender because they're going to help with the financing side of it. What does it mean if you're selling your house? I think the same thing. I think there's a longer planning period now. You know, most of the time with my clients that are selling their houses, there's about a 1 month to 1.5 month planning period before the house goes into the MLS. From the first conversation to what's next, scheduling pictures, scheduling cleaning, doing everything has been 1 to 1.5 months pretty steadily for the last few years. I think we're now in a world where that's a 3 to 6 month plan. Because if you're 6 months out from being ready to list your house, and you look at all the numbers and you know that there might be a $20,000 difference between listing now and listing 6 months from now, we might be adjusting your plans. And so doing that scheduling, having that conversation, really going through what are the goals with your move have become more important than ever. I'd be honored to have that conversation with you if you don't already have an agent. If you have somebody who represents you that you trust, I'd reach out to them and say, hey, we're moving in the second half of this year. Let's talk about it now. So do I have concerns about a crash? Not particularly. There's a lot of demand on right now, and there's not enough supply. Why has there been this long run since 2009, 2010 of continued appreciation? It's because across the board, we do not have enough houses for the number of people that want houses. After the 2008, 2009 crash, there was such a lack of new construction for so long that supply is artificially down. And until they can build enough houses to increase supply, I don't see a situation in which the world is falling apart and everything bottoms out. There is enough demand. There are enough people my age, there are enough millennials who are going to be buying houses that I don't foresee there being a huge jump off of people not paying their mortgages and people in default. The guidelines to be able to buy a home are stricter now than I think they've ever been. And so the people who are buying homes make their payments. And more so than at any other point in history. And I'm not concerned there's going to be a crash because I don't think we're going to see a massive amount of supply without a massive amount of demand. I think we're going to stay steady on that 2 to 10% every single year, hopefully averaging around 4% appreciation. And I think that's going to be a healthy way for people who are ready to retire to sell their house and cash in on their equity. And at the same time, people who are ready to buy their first home still be able to afford to do so. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this and get more informed about real estate in the Space Coast. I would love to continue to be your resource. I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and every single week get more information about Brevard County, Melbourne, and all things real estate here. And I would love to be your resource when it comes time for you to buy a house or sell a house on the Space Coast. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a blessed 2024.